I'll to make it work out. Yeah. So, Darren tells us about yourself. I'll tell him about myself. And we get this going.
Yeah.
How it all started and how what we're doing this today.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's the starting point of when our paths crossed,
Yep.
or there's the starting path of going back even further. How do we get to where we got to, where we even crossed paths?
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I started at BMW. I was working there. Darren started as manager. We met each other, and Darren asked me a question. You asked me.
Yeah. Well, I went into it knowing some things about you
Okay.
because I asked Chris about the team. That's what I was most interested in, is getting to know who the team was
Okay.
on the variable side,
Yes.
the sales side of the dealership, and your name came up immediately as you're the Messi of of the group.
Yes.
So I wanted to know a little bit about you, and Chris said, he immediately said, "Well, Marco, he made over 200,000 that
Yeah.
year," and I thought, oh, that's almost unheard of in the car business, especially with such limited inventory. So
Yeah.
anyway, I immediately, in my walking around, had that thought, and I went to you and I simply asked the question, how has all that money changed your life?
Yeah. Yeah. And my response was, I said, it's not about the money.
Yeah.
It's about the skills that I have acquired and everything that I've learned. That's more important to me, because the money comes and goes. But that's pretty much my answer. And at that point, I mean, I guess you started questioning, like, who is this guy?
Well, when the GM emphasizes the money, right, you get a sense of what is a core value as it's measured in a corporate standard.
Yep.
Right. So it's a corporation, right? So there's an obligation to shareholders and owners to be profitable. Okay. Well, that normally translates down into that. Maybe that's a similar core value for the employees there. So when you gave me a response that said something completely contrary to focusing in on money, in fact, you started talking about things that are deeper core values for me.
Yep.
Coming from being a pastor and a teacher, though we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
There are certain core values. So I was immediately gravitated to what you were going to say next. And
no, and from there we worked together a little bit. I know you got an opportunity, so then you jumped ship. Tell us a little bit more about that opportunity you got.
Yeah. So, I, unlike you, though I have core values that are related to helping and serving others, I also have 5 kids. I have child support.
Yep.
Because not all my kids live with me.
Yep.
Spousal support. I'm also remarried. Our family, we bought our house with my wife's family. So look, there's a lot to cover financially for me. So as nice as it is to think about others, and that's important, and to care about others, that's important.
Yes.
It's can't be at the sacrifice of family. So at the dealership, unlike you, I wasn't making that kind of money in the management role. The rubric on how they pay was much more difficult. So after 6 months, I wasn't making money. And so for that reason, pragmatically, I just needed to go and do something else.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely makes sense. Like, it's not about the money, but it is at the end of the day, because like we talked last time, that's how you take care of your family.
Yes.
That's how you provide free time for yourself to be able to grow yourself and do something that's like we're doing right now to help even more people in the long run. And so the money helps it make it about other people and give you resources to really help some people. That's what you have in mind. So starting with the family for sure.
Starting with family for sure. And though I will say this briefly, this is not the focus of, I think, or the intent of our conversation. Look, a lot of people, men in particular, and they can stay in a comfortable place.
Yes.
right? It may feel good to turn to your spouse or your family and say, look, I'm going to work. I'm going to be gone from 8:30 and I'll be back at 7 o'clock at night. And everybody admires the time that they spend there. But if they're not producing something that's beneficial for the family, you have to be willing to be sacrificial of comfort over the, again, pragmatic things, covering bills and all those things. However, I would say that one of the traps for men is that they can also live in a little bit of a fantasy world where they are buying a lie that by just being somewhere, not taking risks, but only imagining. Imagination doesn't cost anybody anything. But to put imagination into practice, into an actionable plan, that's actually why we're sitting here today.
That is exactly it. You're right.
It's moving beyond the comfort of, hey, I feel good. Bye, honey, I'm going to work. And I can sit there and daydream all day long about money and plans and ideas. But the biggest, scariest thing that I did was have a dream, have an idea, have some opportunities. But then the moment where I have to say goodbye to what is comfortable, even though I wasn't making a lot of money, that actually made it really easy. Had I had a month where I was making good money, it would have actually been more difficult to leave.
Yes.
Because then I would have sat there and thought, well, let me reproduce what I just did this month. And actually the month I left is the month they actually hit all their objectives. And it probably was a good month.
Yeah.
But that I'm glad I didn't get a taste of that, because I know it's been difficult.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think
off topic.
No. It is, because I think that brings, you said comfort, which is one of the things I have here about what stops people from reaching their dreams.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like the subject today was, we talked last time about what propels people to reach their dreams. And this time I feel we can talk about what stops people from reaching their dreams. What stops people from making the money they want to make? What stops people from taking the opportunities that are at hand? And comfort, which you touched on, which is one of the main ones, I feel like. And same way for me, like I've been in the cars for 5 years, started with Toyota, Lexus, BMW, have made money in all of them, great money. But I'm always looking for the next opportunity, because my goal has always been, for me, the American dream is to own your business and have enough resources to then help your family, like you said, and then help other people out, and then inspire other people to do the same, and help people reach the mountains that you have reached and all that kind of stuff. So it starts with putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, because I do believe that one of the main killer of dreams and people's goals and everything that they have in mind is comfort. Because once you get comfortable, it's like, why do I take the risk? Why do I do anything else? Like, I'll be just fine here. I can pay the bills. I can go on a vacation once a year. I can just do that. And in a way, I think that is a little bit selfish, because you're being selfish to your better version of yourself, which we talked about last time, which it could be going towards. And you're being selfish because you're only worried about what is okay with you, and you're not thinking about, okay, the next generation. Okay, what else could I have gave my kids that I wish my parents could have gave me, or what that stuff. So being in a comfortable state, I feel like it's a little bit selfish. And I know you mentioned the other day about how selfishness is you said the cost of pain, or something along those lines.
Well, it comes from an author, a book, a teacher that I love. His name is Andrew Womack. And the title of the book is called Self-Centeredness, the Source of All Grief. The source of all grief. Any grief a person's struggling with, that can be emotional, relational, financial. It can be vocational. All sorts of different ways that people experience grief. The more that, and as hard as this statement is, that could also mean grief, real grief, in the loss of a loved one, which I have experienced that. I've lost a daughter. I've lost a spouse. And if I only ever focused in on myself and my feelings, how that would hinder the ability to grow and move on. Now, there's an appropriate time to grieve. I'm not saying there isn't appropriate grieving, but if you are only identified by that grief, well, you're probably going to get stuck.
Yeah, no, that's great. It really like took me like I want to dig deeper into that. And maybe we won't dig too deep into that today, but I did it did speak to me in a way, and I'm like I want to know more about that particular thing. So
Sure.
maybe later on we could talk about it. But yeah, so what do you believe stops people from their dreams? Like I said, we both came out of this, and like similar to you, I'm making really good money. I'm making 5 figures a month constantly, and then there was a few changes. I don't know if I've told you this. There was a few changes that changed it, and I was already on the edge of like looking for my next opportunity, and so the few changes, which then decreased my pay, and I said, hey, it's time to just put the ball in my hands and go out there and create something for myself. Like I've built all these skills, I've put in all this work, I've put in all these hours. I've acquired all this knowledge, and it's time for me to put it to the test, right? And you either drown or you swim, and so
sink or swim,
and that's pretty much where I'm at. I started with this security company and decided that wasn't necessarily it. So now I made pivot to just starting my own, and that's where we're both at. We're both in this unknown of kind of starting our own things.
Yes.
And that's how we reconnected.
Yes.
And then we started talking. You asked some questions. The questions were really connected. Our dialogue is really good as to talking back and forth.
I'm laughing because what triggered the reach out to you. Well, you actually reached out to me, but what triggered my response to you is I had been thinking about you because a guy at my church looks so much like Mario. Who looks so much like Mario.
He does look a lot like
But anyway, I was laughing. So if you go back and look at this thing, why was Darren laughing when I was pouring my heart out?
Yeah, because you saw Mario playing the guitar.
I saw Mario playing the guitar. Sure. And I thought, this is Marco's brother.
Yeah. Could be.
I showed your picture. Oh, no. It was only you. I showed them. Okay, yeah, you're the one who affirmed. Yeah, that could be my brother.
Yeah, maybe you show him my picture next time.
I'll show him yours. Yeah. Yes. Anyway, but your question was, what are some of the hindrances to being able to do these launch projects, this stepping out? And you were sharing in your particular case, you looked at the opportunities. You were sharing, by the way, I'm going to finish that thought, that you started into one version of a security, then you stepped out and doing your own. And I think that'll be the foundation what we talk about. But you said something I want to circle back to just for clarification for myself and anybody who may listen. You said that there were some changes that happened, and you had those changes impact directly your 5-figure monthly income. Were those changes things that you were doing internally, or were those changes exterior from the company side? Like there were changes from the company standpoint?
Yeah, so I will say it's kind of both. Okay. Because I was feeling like I was stuck and I wasn't growing as much as I would like to.
But not like the pay plan or anything like that?
Well, then the pay plan did change. So I did get changed to a different pay plan, which is completely understandable, and I'm not against. I think it was fair for the company to do so because the company is what's best for the company.
Sure.
And I totally understand that. And part of it as well, I wasn't growing, so I felt like I was stuck. I felt like my wings had been cut off. Yeah. So I wasn't performing the same way either. And maybe that does have an impact on the team as a whole, as I was in a hybrid manager role. And so I can see how that affects things, and then therefore because of my performance affects pay plan, and the pay plan changed, the team, and then the pay plan changed. So I think it's a little bit of both, and I think that's really the last thing that just propelled me to just go ahead and take my chance.
Your heart wasn't in it anymore.
Yeah, my heart wasn't in it, and it's a great company and a lot of great things. I'm very grateful for the time that I was there.
Yeah,
what I was able to accomplish. And the people I was able to impact, whether small or big, I think we're always impacting people in some ways. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity. But then it leaves me at a place where I told myself, I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. Well, I turned 30 in less than 2 months. and
are you close?
I'm not close. I'm not even close.
Okay.
I'm kind of starting from scratch once again.
You have until 31.
Well, see, that's what they tell me. You have until 31 because technically I can still be at 30 and do it. So,
Sure.
So yes, technically, I guess if I look at it that way, it could be I have a year and a couple months. But I said before I turn 30, I want to make it happen. Yes.
Okay.
Um,
without playing the lottery.
Yeah, without playing the lottery, which
right.
I said, well, not taking a chance is a risk, just as taking a risk is. And most people don't see it that way because let's say we have two paths and I am on the path to the left, which could be my current job, my current whatever it is. That is my path. And I come to a place where there's another path that I could take. And if I decide to continue on the path that I am on, I am risking not knowing what was in that path that I could have taken. And therefore, staying on the path you are is also a risk, and just as risk, if not more riskier than checking out the new plan. Yeah. And so that's where I'm like, either one's a risk, but my potential to reach my goal and the path I'm doing, probably not very realistic. It's probably, if I do continue on that path, it's probably going to take me 5 or 10 years. Right. There's this path that I know that I have dabbed into, that I have understood, that I have studied, that I have that really is what got me into sales, was because I was starting some businesses and I realized really soon, I said, I got to get better at sales. Got it. And then I ended up being in sales for 5 years. I believe I acquired a lot of skills, and then I'm definitely a better salesperson than I was when I first started. So I felt that was something I needed to start my business. And so I said, okay, if that's my goal, this path could possibly take me there, but it could take me 5 to 10 years to become a GM, to probably making that kind of money and so on. Or I could create my own path. Right. I could, go through the woods to see if I can find something, and which I have heard of from other people, and I've seen other people be successful in it in the business world. And we all know, that's the way to really generate wealth, is to create your own path. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, I have all these skills. I know all these things. I've created these plans. Yeah. I've had all these failures, which are also important. Yeah. Let's go out and explore the path. Sure. And I'm very confident in it because of just all my experiences and people's experiences and what I have studied and what I've come to know and what we all really know. Business really is the way to wealth, especially in a country like we live in that has the land of opportunities. Yes.
Well, if anybody's listening to this along the way, the setup question on all this is, so what prevents someone from taking that divergent path, right? Yes. So we had talked about comfort. I think I'm looking over and I see fear is a big one. I think that fear and comfort are probably very closely related to one another. Because to step into the unknown is fearful, and the unknown is also uncomfortable. But I would say the big distinction about fear is more internal and personal, right? I can step into discomfort and people around me would know. Like my wife would know if things become financially uncomfortable. My family and my wife would know if I am physically getting ill because I'm working hard or I'm not taking care of myself. Like you can see discomfort probably on a relational level, but fear is definitely more an internal battle. And fear has a lot to do about the mindset and the commitment that an individual has about believing in themselves to accomplish their goal, that path, right? Yours goal, though I know the goal of getting to $1 million by 30 is measured in dollars, it's the measurement and how you got there has to do with your character, has to do with your core values. And if you're going to really truly be committed to the path of getting to your goals, then you're going to really have to believe in yourself more than you're going to have to yield to fear. Fear is a huge enemy.
Yeah, no, it really is. And we also talked last time about positive and negative, how you always want to stay in the positive as much as possible. And I think fear is one of those negative things that will drag you down and will put the brakes on wherever you're going. How do you overcome fear?
Ooh, I think that I'm a work in progress on that
Work in
one.
progress on that.
I think that I have a particular need to
Mm-hmm.
be verbally affirmed. Like one of my there's a book out there called the
The
Five
love
Love
languages. Yeah.
Languages, right? And so for me, from someone I trust,
Mm-hmm.
my spouse, particularly, or my close family or friends, if they can give words of affirmation, that really helps combat fear.
Mm-hmm.
I was recently doing some training at church, and they were saying that it takes typically somewhere about um, 11 affirmations or more
Mm-hmm.
to counterbalance one negative or fearful connotation
Mm-hmm.
or thought. And so in life, we're often told more negative things, which can drive fear more frequently than we can affirmation. So, one of the ways I battle fear, long answer to a very short question,
Mm-hmm.
is be around positive, affirming people I trust. That's one.
Okay.
What about for you?
Yeah, no, I like that. Surrounding yourself with people is very important. I guess one thing for me to overcoming fear, and this is something I do a lot, is getting to the root cause of it,
Mm.
right? Like, okay, I'm scared. Like, let's say public speaking is a big one for a lot of people. I'm scared of public speaking.
Are you actually scared
I'm
about it?
not. No,
Okay.
I'm a natural at it. Like, I really, I could do it. I do it all the
Yeah.
time for
Yeah.
different things, but I'm not. But just as an example for people, and it's something that I would analyze. Okay, I'm I'm scared of public speaking. Okay, why am I scared of public speaking? Okay, well, I'm afraid that people are going to judge me or that I'm going to mess up.
Yeah.
Okay, why are you afraid to messing up? And most of the time, this is going to be the case, or many times it is, because you didn't practice enough and aren't confident enough what you are saying,
Mm.
or you aren't confident enough in yourself.
That's good.
So then you start to get down to, okay, so how, and then you reverse engineer it. Okay, I'm afraid because I can mess up. I can mess up because I'm not as prepared as I could be, or I'm
Right.
not confident in myself as
Yeah.
I should be.
Yeah.
And then, so then that's the root cause of the
Yeah.
problem. And there's like, okay, how can I get more prepared, or
Yeah.
how can I become more confident in myself? Okay, well, you practice it more.
Yeah.
Okay, so the answer to my fear is within the practice. Because
Right.
once I practice it enough and I do it enough times, I get confidence
Yeah.
enough, and I'm no longer afraid of messing up. And also, then it goes back to failure. I
Right.
think failure stops people from moving forward because we're so afraid as failure as a society.
Right.
And it's like, oh, if I fail, people are going to look down on me. People are going to point their fingers at me. People are going to make fun of me. People are going to, then the failure becomes the fear. And it's a never ending circle. But once you can break out of it, then we can go to what we spoke on last time, where it's if you do it enough, the entry to success cycle
Yeah.
is failure.
Yeah.
It really is, because
Yeah.
nobody is ever good at anything from the start.
Right.
When I started selling cars, when I started to ride a bike, when I started doing anything, I was not good at it.
Right.
My entry to that cycle of success was failure.
Right.
And I believe failure should be looked at as stepping stones. But unfortunately, I don't think most people or our society sees it that way.
Part of the success cycle lands on this box of results.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have no practice and you have no experience, you're not going to have the same results, which can hinder your success, hinder your confidence along the way. So that makes perfect sense. Definitely in line with things we previously talked about.
Yeah, like I said, and that's just something that, like, I do that. I don't realize people do it as much. And by other people asking me and with our conversations coming up, I'm starting to realize, okay, I do these practices that not a lot of people have gotten. I call these things systems or that are go into my subconscious or my mind that I don't think of, systems that I've already created in there, that once a fear comes in, my subconscious starts to play that out, and then I have an answer without really putting a lot of thought to it. It's just like practice, right? The more you practice it, the more you practice how to overcome fear, the more natural it becomes to you. But I don't believe a lot of people have those systems in place because our society does not teach us that. Our society kind of does the opposite, I feel like.
So dive into that a little bit more. For me, if I had to take what you just said conceptually, I don't know that I could re-say what you just said. I think there's something really important in there. You said that there's an internal system in your thinking that combats fear. Am I hearing that right?
Yes. Well, that does it for me without me having to put too much thought into it. So the way I look at things, we have the conscious mind, then we have the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is like a computer. It just runs. That's why we breathe without even thinking about it. The subconscious mind is doing that.
Right.
We do certain things moving around without even realizing because our subconscious is there. Our subconscious is like a computer, and we download programs into that computer, which are systems or mindsets. We put those mindsets in our computer. And then without us thinking, our computer automatically does that. It's like a trauma. When somebody has a trauma, they downloaded, I call it a virus, in their computer. And every time that their conscious comes into something that is the trauma or something that appears to be the trauma, which a lot of times is not,
right,
the subconscious automatically uses that hardware that was the trauma and automatically responds to it. So that's where it triggers it. It's the trigger. The same way with solving problems and stuff. So I have became really good at thinking of things on the spot when I'm trying to do this, is because I download a system in my brain. Anything you tell me, I automatically look at both positive and the negative of it. So if a customer tells me, yeah, but I don't want another white car, mine automatically goes to two spots. Okay, why don't you, like, this is a beautiful car. It's not a white, it's pearl. I'm giving it a positive.
Right.
And then I can think of a negative as to, yeah, it's everybody has that car. I have those two things, and then I can use it to do either one.
Right.
So it's just a system within my mind that I've created. And I think a lot of people have systems down to their mind where even if they hear this, they have to practice it enough. You have to unlearn what you've learned and then relearn the system, whatever it is.
I see what
if that makes sense. And then it becomes second nature to you.
Like muscle memory.
Like muscle memory, yes. Like muscle memory.
But in your thoughts.
In your brain, yes.
Right.
In your brain, it becomes muscle memory. And
so you're saying, so for me,
yep.
I admit I'm a classic overthinker. I probably have too much paralysis by analysis, right? So I get stuck because I'm more comfortable analyzing data.
Yep.
And then I just never pull the trigger in some events.
Yeah.
You're saying on a subconscious level, however, the more you can move your experiences, your thought patterns away from over analyzing something, because subconsciously you already have a system or a practice in place that is going to do the analyzing for you, to where either conversations or thoughts or negotiations just becomes secondhand in part of your more involuntary processes.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent way of phrasing it, because I couldn't phrase it the way you say it, but that's exactly what I'm saying.
Good.
Which is crazy, which makes our dialogue so good.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's these systems in place that will help you do so. And so what I have found is, because when I was younger, that's exactly the way I was. I was that person who, like I said, I'm a deep thinker.
Yeah.
I consider myself a deep thinker.
Yeah.
You can tell me a sentence and I'm going to ponder upon it. I'm going to dissect it. I'm going to get down to the psychological part of it. I'm going to get to the religious aspect of it. I'm going to dissect that thing. However, that is how I'm made. But I have realized something with myself, and the 4 colors at work. I don't know how much practice you have.
Yeah.
And you have
the management by strength.
The management by strength. You have the direct people. You have the extroverted, or if you want to call it bubbly people. You have your analytical people, and then you have your more people that are people pleasers. So once
sociable.
Once I know, and that's one thing that's important, is being self-aware of what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Because once I know what my strengths are, I knew my weakness was that I took too much time trying to make a decision.
Guilty.
And that's a big problem for a lot, because a lot of people are that way, and we're wired that way.
Yeah.
But when you realize what your strengths are, you realize you have a weakness within that strength as well.
Yes.
And so I told myself, and I said, I need to just make decisions quicker. I have lived enough and thought enough about things that I need to trust myself a little bit more.
That's good.
Just like I would trust if you told me something. If you told me, you know, Marco, that blue outside on the sky, that's called a baby gorilla blue. Then I'd be like, okay, that's baby gorilla blue, because I trust in Darren. I trust that I trust you, that you're not going to lie to me. I trust that this. But sometimes we don't trust ourselves enough, and we double think things.
Yeah.
Once I realized that my strength was that I overthought things, and I realized that I have good intentions, that I have smart enough, that I have experience enough and seen enough to be able to make a decision. So what happens, and this is something that I've thought and I've seen lately, is the faster that you can turn a thought into an action will exponentially increase the speed at which you travel and whatever it is that you're going to. Because even though let's say you have a thought and you said, hey, I'm going to take this path, which is what I did. I said, I'm going to go into the home security, and I'm going to go with this team. I realized very soon that wasn't the actual right move to make. But because I made the move in that direction, then I came another path that had several different paths. And I said, okay, I moved in this direction. I'm moving down this path, and I realized there's other paths where I can send this one, I can take the other ones. I said, I'm going to redirect myself to the new path. But I feel like that has gotten me further than if I just would have stayed and not done anything at all to begin with, or if I would have just kept thinking about it.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to ask, have you second guessed yourself along the way? Have you had moments where you're laying in bed and you're like, if you reverse engineer a lot of things, you can also reverse engineer back to when the original diverging path happened, right? You chose to left the dealership. And have you had moments where you're laying in bed and you follow that river, that flow back, and you're like, whew, here I am. I went down this path.
Yeah.
I can't swim back upstream. I mean, is that a real thing?
No, it's a great question. And yes, like being able to overcome fear and become like that, have that system where I can just, my conscious knows about it, my subconscious then does what it does, and then reassures me that, okay, this is normal, this is okay, let's keep going. I have had thoughts about, okay, I've never had thoughts about going back. That I have not. I have never second guessed myself about going back to the dealership. What I have second guessed about myself is, should I keep down this path, or should I just go get another job? Because I can easily go back and get another 6-figure job, and it will pay the bills, and it would do all of that. And then that's where I gotta see, okay, what is the best case scenario if I do so?
Right.
If I do go get another job, and let's say I make $100,000, I'll make $200,000, I make up to $300,000 for that 1 year. It's gonna take me 3 years, 4 years, maybe 5 years. Once again, I'm in that same path I started with. Right. If I can stick this one long enough, and I give everything that I can in my power and my ability, my skills, if I stick to the game plan which I have created, and the path that my mind has navigated and created already for me, it's there. I know it'll work. I'm confident in all those years, all those experiences, all those things that I had. I'm confident in it, and I'm willing to risk being wrong to possibly obtain it than I would be to being comfortable and getting back in that path of just creating this. And I have learned so much in the 2 months that I left the dealership. I've learned a lot, and I know those are things that I couldn't have learned otherwise. Therefore, I'm seeing it as a win.
Yeah.
And even if I do come crashing down, and let's say, to process my mind, let's say that this doesn't work, and let's say that it just fails and comes to the ground. Well, that's okay, because the things that I've learned there are going to be very useful. My failures are the stepping stones to my success.
Right.
So I'm going to take all of that which I've learned, and I'm going to reapply it to whatever is next. And I still have 3-4 years ahead of me as I would have if I to get there, which I still would have had on the other path as well. Does that kind of make sense? Like it's still not a lot of time that I've given up 6 months, giving up a year, and trying this adventure and failing. Is still, I think I learned a lot more, and it's a bigger stepping stone for me in propelling to my future, opposed to taking the safe route.
Yeah.
Which I understand is not the case for everybody, because there are things that change, and I think I have them written here. You have responsibilities.
Yep.
And responsibilities is, I think, it's another thing that stops people, which is not necessarily a good or a bad thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I admitted to my responsibilities.
Yes, you admit to your responsibilities.
Right? I admitted that there are some things that are pragmatic for me. I have to just minimally cover certain responsibilities. That's a driver for me that may not be the same driver for you.
Correct. Yeah. No. And that's an advantage that I could possibly have over a lot of people, right? That, like, maybe I don't have kids, I don't have a family, and so those type of things is an opportunity that I can do when I'm young. But also, I do want to emphasize in that how that can also be, responsibilities can be an excuse for people to stay in their comfort level.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
And responsibilities, like I said, it's like if I were to have kids, probably the way I can't say this is just kind of what I said. I think I would think this way, but I can't confirm it because I don't have kids. I can't say I do, because okay, my kids deserve the best, so I have to take the risk to be able to provide for my kids. And then you go into the state of fear once again. But then once you've done it enough, you get on that cycle of success, and you're like, okay, this has been proven to be successful.
Yeah.
Which risk am I going to take? At the end of the day, what risk are you taking?
Yeah. So I had a little bit of a word picture come to mind around this idea of responsibility. I think that when we talk about responsibility, you say it can be both positive and negative, right? There can be one side of you feel so much responsibility that you don't take any risks because that's your comfort zone. It's the guaranteed role in the function of your job to produce X amount of money, right? And so nobody's going to blame you in that particular case.
Right.
All right. I was watching. So let me go over to something positive. This is kind of an interesting thing for me. I'd never really thought about it until I saw it watching a basketball game the other day. The positive side of responsibility in this conversation reminds me of watching a particular point guard playing. I think he was playing for the Bulls. He had the ball. It was his responsibility. He's got one of two things he can do: pass or shoot. But the 24-second clock was winding down. And the commentator was saying he is intentionally holding on to that ball to get down to the last second of the shot clock, because responsibility, he couldn't pass it. There's not enough time to pass and shoot. So from a responsibility standpoint, he held onto the ball. And he said, the commentator about this is, when you're in that situation where you have no other choice to shoot the ball, there's a layer of confidence that you have that it's your responsibility to do only one thing now. Normally you could have passed, no time. You have to shoot the ball. And there's a certain freedom knowing that the only wise decision to make is you got to at least shoot the ball.
Yep.
And in that particular case, he did hit the shot.
Nice.
He makes the shot, and it was his responsibility, but there was a certain freedom he had in taking the shot because the converse of either turning the ball over or passing the ball, it didn't make sense.
Yep.
In life and business, like I felt like that leaving the dealership.
Nice.
For me, I felt like the clock is that the shot clock is coming down. I don't have time to pass. I've tried mortgages. I'm back in the car business. I loved the culture for the first time in a car dealership, but my responsibilities were driving me to say, I have no other time to do what I need to do, but to make the kind of money I need to make. And it's not happening here. I got to take my 3-point shot. And that's when I decided, hey, look, this opportunity is coming to me in an extremely significant time with the right circumstances, the shot clock kind of metaphor. And I just needed to take this shot. But there was a faith component to it. I really trusted and believed that the Lord was making certain, what I would say, some divine connections that wouldn't have been there under normal circumstances. So between some of those dynamics, I'm like, I got to do this. And that's ultimately, I kind of felt like I was on the shot clock. And it did make leaving, it removed the fear out of the decision.
Yeah, no, and that's
that make sense?
No, 100%. That's perfectly. You're 100% right, because then it leaves you to the point where, like, okay, this is the only path, and here's what I feel, because I have started some business ventures in the past, and I think I could have made them work, but I jumped out of them too early because I had other options, and because with people around me, which are people that had they didn't know what it was to make a lot of money. So therefore their mentalities were limited to what they knew. And I listened to those people around me because I didn't have anything otherwise. And they said, oh, look how your finances are getting, you should probably like just get a job or this and that. And so I, based off my surrounding, the mindset that I knew at the time, and I had the software that I had downloaded to my mind then, defaulted to jump out and get a job again. And then therefore I gave up opportunities that now I look back and I'm like, I would have been where I want to be now if I kept on that path. But because I had opportunities to get out, because I had an opportunity to pass the ball and not take the shot, I don't know what that outcome could have ever been. And so I think sometimes when your back is against the wall is the best scenario for some of us to create something out of it. And sometimes we fear that. But maybe we don't hear that enough from people around. I don't think people are humbled enough to just, like the first 5 minutes of what you were talking about, your story, how open you are. I think those are the things that really help people. Instead of saying like, oh yeah, I have no fear, I can get over it, I know how to do all this, and then like people are like, okay, this guy's a superhero, I can't be like him. But when you open up that vulnerability part of yourself, then people can relate to you and they can see the progress that you made, and then it's more attainable, more realistic.
And I think there's a certain authenticity that we would be morally responsible to maintain, right? Like, okay, there could be some of those superhero figures out there. They can be really intimidating and off-putting a little bit. However, most of those conversations, you start to see that ego, self-centeredness, a little bit of self-elevation, it's a bit of a turnoff from a character standpoint. So I think the more relatable and authentic these conversations and the opportunities we have in business to be authentic, even with clients or customers, I think it's a key component of being relatable, and it probably a good success characteristic.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And something I don't like about certain businesses, the way they go about it is they will take the deal over those types of things, being authentic and being honest with the clients and be like, okay, maybe this doesn't work for you, or just tell them, hey, it is going to be a little bit past your budget. Like this, I know you have these things you said. And so I think sometimes the businesses misses that point of authenticity that therefore turns customers off. And then that's where they start to tell their friends. And although they made the purchase, they may have the regret of purchasing it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a bad thing. So the
Yeah.
more that you can be authentic and find out and be completely honest with your
Yeah.
clients,
Yeah.
I think that's exactly to what you're saying. I think it makes excellent sense. And opposed to talking to people as well, being like, okay, I had all these struggles and this is how I got past them. You can do it the same way because we're nothing special. We're just two individuals trying to figure it out. And we've been lucky to have learned a lot of skills, to have God play a role in our lives, to then we'll be confronted, the people around us. All a combination of all that have propelled us to then be here today, whatever that is, and therefore have a plan and execution, and one day be to where we want to be, and then we could be living proof of what we're speaking of.
Well, what you just referred to is something that's consistent with what you were previously talking about, and that is a commitment to the plan. You at some point said to yourself, you have enough experience, you have enough acumen in business, you have enough money where you are not looking for an exit strategy at this point. So I would put all this under the banner of there's a genuine level of commitment to the path that you're on at this point.
Yes.
Let me ask you this question. Okay. At what point would you, the path that you're on now with security systems, okay? You're committed to it. You're not going to deviate from it. You believe in yourself. You believe that the software you've downloaded, all of the subconscious, everything is lining up for you to stay committed to the path you're on. Could anybody talk you out of the path of commitment that you're on right now?
Well, I do believe that we all have a price, right? we all have a price. However, like if somebody were to tell me, hey, I'll give you a $500,000 salary and you have room to grow, to learn, to do all this stuff, I'd be like, that's kind of a hard one to pass. However, that is not the most important thing is the money, because although somebody, hey, I offer you $500,000 to come do this business, but then I look into the business and they're doing things that don't line up with my morals, with deeper things within me, then I'm not going to take them. And a big thing about my driving force to doing this is if I'm not able to create the culture and the work environment that I've been looking for, that still won't do it for me, because that's a big driving force. That's a big part of it. Is I want to create a company with a culture that can be reflected and help other people out.
Consistent with your core values.
Consistent with the core values, starting with the core values and creating that culture and caring for the employees, because I believe that is a big driving force in me. I don't see that culture that I want, that my heart so much desires for. I don't see it, and I'm like, I don't see it. Well, guess what? I got to create it. And if somebody were to offer me something that was tempting, I have to analyze those things and see, okay, if I really don't think money is the most important thing, what are the most important things? And if I take this opportunity, does that line up with it? Yes. Okay, let's move forward. And then that continues. So yes, there is a chance that I could go away from the game plan. I see a very slim chance of that. However, who knows? I'd have to evaluate the situation, but there's always a chance. We all have a price, like I said.
It's interesting when you were sharing that story. your feedback to my question, your response, it triggered a memory in me. Okay, so I hope I'll be able to weave this into the conversation to where it makes sense.
No, let's do it.
Okay, so commitment. Okay, that's kind of where this all started. Like, how do you, are you so overly committed to where it looks like you're just being foolish to keep going? In your case, you were talking more of, there's a carrot that got dangled in front of me, and that is pulling me off of my commitment to this path. And I think you're right. I think that there is always a price. I think there's a big enough carrot to where you'll take it.
Yes.
But I was thinking more, does your commitment look like just pure stubbornness to where you're not going to be successful? That's the side that triggered the memory. Okay. So I grew up in a fairly affluent part of Southern California in Orange County. My dad had a club membership to a very prestigious golf course in Southern California. I grew up playing golf at a private country club. Like, I feel very blessed and beyond privileged, right? So, well, my dad owned several businesses along the way in the semiconductor world in late 70s through the time he retired. He's always involved in semiconductors and technology. So somewhere along the way in 1986, he started a company called Motion Phone Technology. I remember in 1986 setting up 2 PCs in our home. And he was down in our laundry room and I was up in our library study. That sounds even more bougie when I say the library study. When the word slipped out of my mouth, I thought, well, gosh, sounds like rich folk. So that's where it was. And that's where the 2 systems were. And in this, remember, this is 1986.
Yeah, 1986.
Okay? There's one computer and he had cameras built into the, attached. And I remember Windows on the system I was looking at. I could see him in the camera, talk with him on the camera. I could still perform the processing functions of the PC. And there was also a stream to where you could put TV in there. It was like wild.
Yeah.
And that was some of the technology he was playing with back in the 80s for his company called Motion Phone Technology. Okay. I remember being so, I admired my dad so much for all of the risks he was taking. I was so impressed with all of the products that were around. I was kind of baffled by all of this stuff that didn't exist anywhere.
Yeah, 1986.
Okay, in 1986. Yeah. And we would talk about all the ways that you could use this product. And I remember brainstorming with my dad at, I guess in 86, I probably was 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah.
And talking with him about this stuff and thinking, ooh, look how smart I am at 11 years old.
Yeah.
And he would even say, oh, that's a good idea. I'd never thought about that before. And the company was a monumental failure in 1986 because there was not an infrastructure of network that could have the bandwidth to pull the data through a computer in 1986. This is pre-internet. So everything was internal networking. And as much as you may want to move this to the public sector of, law enforcement or government, it wasn't, the technology was too ahead of its time from a hardware standpoint, including the semiconductors that made a lot of this work. So great idea. We use our cell phones every single day now to do video chatting and all. I'm sounding like an idiot for just saying video chatting.
It is video chat though.
But right. So I'm sure somebody's much more technologically more like uses the right terminology. Anyway, so the company was this huge failure. I remember my dad kind of reflecting on Motion Phone, and I remember him saying things like, "Yeah, you know, we're on a budget at home in this nice big home, but hey, look, we lost millions of dollars on this."
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought about. My reflection has always been how proud I was of my dad to be committed long enough to take the risk. I remember thinking I admire him more for the risk. And I didn't feel the pain of losing the money at 11, 12 years old. He felt the pain of losing the money. But all I could look back on is I really admire my dad because he took this risk. I didn't think about success or failure.
Mm-hmm.
But at one point, he just had to say, look, as committed as I am to the project, it's impossible for this to move forward at this time in history. So I say all that. It's a long story, isn't it?
Oh, it's a good story. It's a really good story, actually.
But it's at some point, commitment can almost look foolish. Is there, had you thought much about, like that scenario?
Yeah, no, for sure. And like I said, so I have had some businesses that I've started when I was in my early 20s. Which, like, so I made a Shopify store, which I created my own logos and stuff, put it online, and my first month off the bat, I made $8,000. That was way better than I thought it was.
Wow.
I did spend about, I think, $4,500 on marketing, but then I had a return of $4,500. And then I spend it all on my bills, being so young, not necessarily understanding that.
Right.
And then, like I said, I could have got a loan. I could have done something else to do so. But at the time, what I knew was, okay, just get another job. We'll come back to this later. It really didn't work that way. So I've experienced stuff like that. So it goes back to this, like, if I get to a point where I know, okay, obviously I have finances, I have to be responsible. So I don't have responsibilities to the level that other people may have it, but I still do have responsibilities to my bills. I have a car payment. I lease an apartment downtown. So I do have a responsibility in that sense, to where I can't just infinite go until it works. There is a limitation to me, which are finances, which are my bills, which then therefore I know that if it got to the point where it's that, I also believe that, I mean, I could possibly jump out, or I could scramble to try to find a way out. And if I could scramble and find a way out and continue it, because I think I see it as, okay, all I really need is, can I get this company moving forward one more month? I evaluate, okay, how about one more week? Okay, maybe not. Okay, how about another day? Yeah, I could probably get another day. Okay, let's try it for one more day. See what tomorrow may bring, because tomorrow's a whole other day.
Yeah.
And maybe tomorrow somebody comes along that's really interested in what I'm doing and wants to invest, and he has some resources, and then we continue it on. So I would like to continue this to the point where I feel like I can know more. It could come in really soon, actually, or it could actually come in a lot further down. I don't know, but I will continue until I can't know more.
Yeah.
And I believe by doing so, it'll help me find different paths that I have not found before and I weren't aware that were there, and therefore will help me in my next venture.
Yeah.
Or I could then use that and help somebody who may be experiencing the same thing that I am, and they feel they're in at the very end of the tunnel, and there's no way out, no turning back, and I can be like, hey, try this tool. Or, if you light up a match and it'll make a small explosion enough to help you continue on a little bit more. And maybe continuing that little bit more is where the treasure is.
Wow.
I know we've all seen that picture of that guy that keeps hammering. There are two guys in a tunnel hammering. One of them finds One of them turns around right before he takes that last hit where the treasure actually is, and the other guy is right there about to swing it. It's like you never know how far you are, because we said last time, we're one decision away. Yeah. We're one thing away. Yeah. We could be one day away. Yeah. We don't know what that is. So it's the people who are consistent, committed, and don't give up that I've noticed and I've seen who make it. Like it's the times where I'm selling cars and I'm at 2 cars and everybody's way ahead of me, but I have faith in my system. I have faith in confidence in myself and my skills, and I just continue to do so over and over, and the success comes. Now, like I said, is there a chance that the same thing could happen to me as your dad's company, which is mobile, what was it, mobile phone?
Motion phone technology.
Motion phone technology. And it comes to where, like, okay, I have explored all of my options. I have drained all my resources. Here, I cannot afford to go another day. When that day comes, then I will look for a new path. And I may have to go back. But until that day, I feel like I owe it to myself to continue, because the lessons along the path and the small things that I learned are going to be huge for the next venture that will come in the future. And like people tell me that all the time, you know, like people that are close to me, like, well, you're a risk taker. I'm like, yeah, and is that a bad thing? And they say it as it is. And whenever I have a job, I have a good paying job. I was a manager at Walmart at like 22 years old, which was really good. And I was getting paid well. And I said, okay, I want to venture to business. So that's when I started marketing and the online clothing company. Both at the same time, I left my job. They offered me a raise and a higher up position. I declined it. I continued. If I actually would have stayed, they actually ended up removing that position, and they would have paid me out $25,000 like cash out. So could that have been a better path money wise? Yes. But learning wise, I'm not sure. I like to think that I am on the right path regardless of the wrong things that I've made. And so therefore I ventured that. I did it for some 6-7 months, didn't work out. Then I went to them like, okay, if I want to do business like I did in sales, should I do real estate? Should I do insurance? Should I do car sales? Car sales was the easiest to get into. So I got into car sales. Then I decided, okay, I'm capped out here. I'm the top salesperson for 2 years. I'm only making $75,000 a year. I have a hard time finding friends who can challenge me and who can relate to me, because I am in Dodge City, Kansas. I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Your first
25,000
car sales was in Dodge City.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I need to do something else. And so I'd actually only been to Kansas City once before to a concert, and I don't remember liking it that much, but I didn't really explore anything. But I'm like, okay, I want a city that's still close to home so I can get to my parents.
On the train.
On the train.
Talk about that later.
I'll talk about the train later. And, you know, my parents will be back home. I can be back within one day, you know, within 5 hours, I can drive back home. I can jump on the train, be there overnight. And so that was just a factor that played. I explored Colorado Springs, I explored Austin, I explored Kansas City. It just worked out this way. But actually, I told my manager, okay, I'm putting my 2 weeks. Okay, cool. The weekend before I moved to Kansas City, I already had my lease signed and everything. They announced on the news that Kansas City is doing a shutdown because of COVID. My manager started calling me and texting me like, hey, have you watched the news? I said, no, what's going on? They're like, well, Kansas City is shutting down because of this COVID thing. You sure you don't want to stay here and wait until see what happens? And I didn't even think about it. I said, no, like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I said, one way or another, it brought me to a situation, like you said, as to like, what if it doesn't work out? Like, what do you do? And I'm like, it's okay. I'll figure it out. Like, I'm willing to go to the limit to get there. And if it doesn't, then I'll redirect myself then. But I at least got to give it the chance. And I moved, and I show up to the dealership. All the lights are turned off. I'm knocking. And
here in Kansas City?
Yeah, here in Kansas City at
Which
Lexus.
dealership?
Lexus.
Oh, Lexus.
And I'm I'm knocking there. I'm like about to, like, what do I do now? Like maybe nobody's here. And finally, like they open the door. Like, can I help you? I'm like, oh, I'm the new guy. I'm here to. My name's Marco. I'm like, okay, come in. I go in. There's like 3 people standing there. All the lights are turned off. They're like, we don't know what we're gonna do. Like, we're not sure. And so for the first, luckily I got to keep
Was
my
this
job.
like right in April of 20?
This was March of 20, like March 17th, March 13th, one of those two, because I remember
right when it happened.
right when it happened. Like my first day was, I went to orientation for like a couple of hours. Then the next day I showed up, and that's when everything was shut down.
Yeah.
So I was living in an air mattress for 3 months because the furniture stores weren't closed. I was eating Raisin Canes every day.
Oh my goodness.
I was in a room because I didn't know anybody in Kansas City. And
what part of town were you living in?
I was in Overland Park. I was at Corbin Park, right behind Corbin Park, Corbin Greens. But I was like, okay, that's fine. I got a job. I got a little bit of money to sustain me. And they actually were paying me minimum wage, which at the time was like $8.25 for the first 2 months I worked there. But what I did is when I was there those 2 months, I started sharpening my sales skills. I started to learn the product. I went through all my training. I started to see who does what at the dealership so I can befriend people so I know who to go to. I was practicing my walk around. I was practicing my
Even
sales.
though you had been a top salesman
yes,
before.
Even
so
though I've been a top salesman.
You didn't come into it with a closed mind. You didn't come into it thinking I know everything. That's an important part of your story. But
yeah, no, it is. Maybe I don't realize this to what point because it's a new environment. It's a new thing. Now it's a true test to if I can do it or not. And once I started for my first like week, I sold like 11 cars. They were really impressed, like, oh, who is this guy? Like this kid just started selling. And then I sold like 27 cars and I sold 25. And everybody was cheering me to reach 30, which I didn't. But then they were like having people walk or have people come to me so I can train them and all this stuff. And so, but that time where I was down, there's always something that you can do. And although there was a chance that it might not work out, that I would have lost my job, okay, then somebody somewhere has got to be hiring. I just got to find them. There's a way that I can make money online. I just got to find out what that way is. But sometimes we're not confronted with those things. We're not forced to hold the ball and to only have the option to shoot to where we do it, and we stay there. I heard this saying the other day, and a guy said, he said, no, if you bring a horse to water, there's a chance that he may or may not drink. But if you leave a horse without drinking water for 2 days, and he has wounds on him and a broken leg, and he's laying down, and you bring him a bucket of water, he's probably going to drink out of it because his circumstances are completely different. You can't make yourself grow in circumstances where there's exits to go out. The real growth happens when you have no way out. Commitment. So I look for those opportunities within a business, within goals, within my risks, because I have learned that when I do take those risks, I'm faced with the one path. I'm faced to shoot the ball, and I learn so much from it, opposed to staying in a comfort state. And yes, maybe the money's good, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is you becoming the best version of yourself. It's becoming who God created you to be, and it's created who you know within yourself you should be and you could be. And when you become that individual, I believe everything else works itself out. Your relationship with God, with your religion, with your family, with friends, with finances, with your leadership. When you seek that individual of yourself, everything else works itself out. And so that's kind of what I look for in a path, and why I continue to creep and continue to go on the path, even though it gets narrower and narrower as I go, and it gets to a point where I have no other way. Then I explore, how can I get out of this? Is there a way out of this? And if there really truly isn't, that's okay. I will start over somewhere else, and I'm not afraid to start over. And people tell me that too all the time, like, why? You have it so good here. Why do you move on? So why are you going to leave from Toyota? Manager's like, you have it good here. You're making money. You're the top guy. We have plans for you. And I told him, yeah, but certain fish only grow as big as their surrounding, I said. And my surrounding is very small here. So then I went to Lexus, and I was top selling for Lexus for a year. And I said, okay, I want to grow again. I feel like I'm not growing. Then I go into real estate for a little bit. So I was in real estate for about 7 months. And then I started BMW one more time. And when I started BMW, same thing, 3 months, I only sold 6, 7 cars, just normal. But I was spending a lot of time studying, going over my craft, learning, growing myself. And then boom, the third month I sold 27 cars once again. And then I sold 30, which I've never been done. And just from then on was history. But I'm always working on my craft no matter what.
That's the horse who's willing to take and the drink from the bucket. That's
Yes.
You've got a commitment. You have a mindset as well to where you, again, this is the software that you've downloaded in the subconscious level where no matter where God puts you, no matter what environment you're in, you will always be the highest producer in whatever environment you're in.
Yeah, no, and you did bring up a good point. There is some to extent as in faith, as I do believe. I do also have that on me that I do believe that God will help me get through it.
Yes.
And so on top of everything that I have, I believe within myself that I have a safety net.
Yeah.
That is my belief in God,
faith.
my faith that is there.
Yeah.
If all fails, if everything is completely done for, and I fall to my knees and I lose everything, I can get myself up because I know that God is there. He sees me, He hears me, and if I got Him on my side, He will show me the ways.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there is also an aspect to when before I make a decision, I do pray about it. I do see what God has to say and then have discernment from there and then move accordingly. So there is a side of that as well, that